Clearly, the work that Ripon does is incredibly important, and so thanks to all of you for what you do, trying to make certain that we have as large a group of support as possible. That's the only way to truly win elections, and if we're going to put in place the policies that all of us hold dear, we've got to have a broad spectrum of the American people being supportive of our effort, and you're part and parcel of that. I do want to apologize a bit for my voice. We've got a little spring cold that I'm hanging on to, and so if it sounds a little too raspy, I apologize. I don't think I'm contagious, so if you happen to get ill, I will try to find a doctor for you. You don't want an orthopod treating you, though, by the way. Really unsettled times, troubled times right now for our nation. It just feels like things aren't clicking on all cylinders. And one of the byproducts of that has been fascinating that I have sensed and been confronted with over the past couple of months. I think I'm up to 6 or 7 members of the House of Representatives who at some point during the past couple of months have come up to me on the floor and said, hey, you got a couple minutes? Sure. And you sit down and you can almost tell, after the first 2, you can almost tell the posture and the tone of the voice. And I think all of these folks have been elected since 2010. And they say something like, is this what this is really all about? Is this what we do? And a huge frustration about just what it is that they gave up, and each of them run through what they were doing before, and how they loved what they were doing before, and how they gave that up because they wanted to come to Washington and help solve big problems. That's what we come to Washington for. And they just haven't sensed that this has been a fulfilling venture for them over the past 2, 4, 6 years. Now that ought to be troubling to all of us. Troubling to me, but it ought to be troubling to all of us, because if we get good men and women who commit to public service and find the wherewithal and the path and the strategy to be able to get elected and come to Washington and then go home, and what they will go home with is the message to a lot of folks is that place ain't working and it's not worth your time. Which is a really troubling message. I think that breeds some of the cynicism, or would expand some of the cynicism that we're sensing across the country. So when you're talking with folks who you probably have had some of those conversations and they voice a little concern, I want to urge you to lift them up and give them a hug and say, no, what you're doing is important, because it is, and what we need to do is make certain that we're allowing people the opportunity to expand what they're able to do here, and part of that is a fraternity, sorority group of folks here who are supporting people, good folks, who have left a lot at home and have given the sacrifice. If we think about where we are right now, politically, but also economically, I think the two have a significant nexus. I can't remember, Jim, whether I mentioned the last time I was here kind of a theory that I had, but I think it has been borne out. And that is that after the 08-09 crisis, debacle, downturn, challenge, recession, whatever you want to call it, the left had this narrative that they were pushing, that the reason that happened was that there was that free market capitalism failed, and that there was too little regulation. You've heard this, I suspect. Many of you are battling this every single day. And narratives that take hold in our society are dynamic. They come and they wax and they wane depending on the occurrences of the day. But let me suggest to you that narrative has taken hold in a significant way. So much so that one of the leading candidates, and an individual who still remains in the presidential race on the Democratic side, is a self-proclaimed socialist and is gaining huge support among our kids and our grandkids. Ought to concern us all, by the way. But if we believe as a society that free market capitalism hasn't succeeded and that there's too little regulation, then we all lose. Every one of us loses. In fact, I would suggest every single American loses, because then all of the solutions do something to tamp down on free market capitalism and increase regulation. So how's that working? And that's what we've had basically the last 7 or 8 years. It is a leadership, it is a culture, it is a certain sector of our federal government now who firmly believes that free market capitalism has failed or is failing or doesn't work, even worse, and that more regulation is needed. So when you see the growth rate over the last quarter, it was 0.5%. Something caused that. Now, these things go up and down as well, but we've had an average growth rate of around 2% for the last 8 years in this country. The average growth rate for the last 40 or 50 years is 3.2%. So we're off about 30 to 40% in terms of growth in our economy. Now, what that means is that when the economy is tamped down to that degree, then what's happening out in the real world is that there aren't jobs for folks to get in the areas that they want. Kids come out of college without the ability to find jobs in their field of endeavor. Full-time work goes to part-time work. Dreams get tamped down. Horizons get narrowed. The kinds of things that we say that we want to expand and encourage opportunity and encourage success are challenged because the economy is sitting down here in the doldrums. And you've begun to see over the last couple months or so, the narrative coming out of the White House and elsewhere is that 2% is that's all right. It's all right. Let me encourage you to push back hard on that. 2% it doesn't work for our society and cannot work to allow all of the things that we believe to thrive and to survive. So where do we go? Paul is Speaker Ryan is a dear friend and as you know well, he's just a policy wonk, which is a wonderful thing. Didn't want the job, and as I've told folks, it's probably a good person to pick who doesn't want the job at this point, because herding cats in this town is a huge challenge, and if anybody can do it, it's somebody who didn't want the job in the first place, I promise you. But what he has said, and I agree wholeheartedly, is that as we run through the next 6 months, this election that is going to be unlike any election we've ever seen, if we have a personality contest, then everybody loses, and I suspect we do too. If, however, we have a race based upon policy solutions, then we got a chance. Then we got a fighting chance, because I believe that the vast majority of the American people are on our side on policy, but we tend not to be able to articulate it in a way that either hits their ear well or makes sense. So what we've got to do is articulate it in a way that captures their imagination and their aspirations and their dreams as well. So let me tick through very quickly, and I suspect you've had this, but I think it's important to be able to have you have it front of mind. Tick through the 5 areas that we're going to be working on, where we come out with not just notional ideas on this, but real substantive items prior to the convention. So whether it's legislation, whether it's a white paper, whether it's a strategy for adoption, whatever it is, these 5 areas I think you'll recognize will be supported by the large majority of the American people. And if we're again able to have this be a policy debate, then we got a chance. First is tax reform. Near and dear to many of your hearts, we've got the highest business tax rate in the industrialized world. You hear it over and over again. If you're a small business, we've got a higher tax rate than that. And from an international tax standpoint, we punish American domiciled companies do business overseas, make a buck. We punish them for bringing it back. That doesn't make any sense at all. We need a complete overhaul of the tax system. The Ways and Means Committee and the task forces are working to come up with a strategy and a plan to do just that. And I'm excited about the kinds of conversations that we're having with members and behind closed doors on this. And Dave Camp, in the work that he did as chair of the Ways and Means Committee, was absolutely vital to lay the foundation for what needs to be done. But we are expanding the options of solutions being put forward within our group right now, and I'm excited about what is likely to be forthcoming again prior to the convention. So we'll have a plan that I think folks will be able to embrace. Second is healthcare, near and dear to my heart, clearly. We're in this huge transition in healthcare right now that isn't working. We got a lot of folks who gain coverage, but they don't have care because they're paying premiums that are $1,000 a month, and their deductible is $6,000 or $8,000 or $10,000, and they're making $50,000. And when they look at the doc, when the doc says you need this, and how much it costs? Oh, it costs a couple $1,000. Sorry, I can't do that. And so folks are literally walking out of doctors' offices today, will walk out of doctors' offices today, making decisions about their health care based upon solely their inability to be able to pay, and our system is not allowing them to be able to access the care that they need. That's a system that may work for government, it may work for others, but it certainly doesn't work for patients. And so we need to move in the direction of what I call patient-centered health care, which means patients and families and doctors making medical decisions and nobody else. There's a way to do it. We've been pushing our bill, as you know, to HR 2300 for years and years. The task force is embracing all sorts of wonderful ideas that it's not that the ideas for solutions that have been out there have been infinite. You know the kinds of things that we're talking about, making certain that folks get covered, that they can afford the coverage, that care is accessible to them, and that we're saving significant resources, and that we're doing so in a way that provides patients the kind of choices that they want and need to be able to decide who's taking care of them when and how and the like. So I'm excited about the first draft and first cut that I've seen of the task force work that's been done. We've got another listening session this afternoon to listen to members, and we'll be coming forward with something that will unify us, I believe, as a House Republican Conference. Third is upward mobility, something that Paul has worked on for years and is so incredibly important. You all know this well, but we've spent trillions of dollars in this country on the war on poverty over the last 50 years. The rate of poverty, percent of population in poverty 50 years ago is essentially the same as it is right now. 14.8% in 1965, 14.7% right now. We have spent trillions and trillions of dollars, and we haven't moved the needle a bit. Any sane individual, any sober society, any reflective society would step back and say, what happened? Why have we not done better than that? And what we've done is, as you know, is taught a lot of learned dependence. We've got a lot of folks who are dependent on government, but we haven't encouraged and incentivized earned success. And that's what we believe we ought to be doing. We ought not be measuring the success of our poverty programs, our assistance programs, by how much money is going in. We ought to be measuring them by how many people get off the program and are able to lift up their sights and horizon and realize their dreams. And we simply have not done that. And so we've got to push hard, and we'll, again, the task force work has been really enlightening, encouraging, and uplifting for folks who many of the people that I mentioned came here to help their fellow citizen in their district and the opportunities available to them. So we're moving forward in a very positive way there. Fourth is national security. Some of you are in that space. This is a very dangerous world. We've cut about $500 billion from the Pentagon over the last 5 years. We're projected to cut another $500 billion over the next 5 years. That's $1 trillion that I believe is moving in the wrong direction. Yes, we need to get our spending under control. Yes, we need to make certain that we balance the budget. Yes, we need to make certain that we create an economic vibrancy out there that allows the economy to grow and all those good things. None of that can happen if we're not secure as a country. And so we're pushing hard and trying to get folks to appreciate and realize within our conference and across the country that 3% or less than 3% of GDP spent on defense is not enough in this dangerous time. In the early 60s, mid-60s, we were spending 6% of gross domestic product on defense. Now we're half of that and going in the wrong direction. And so we're going to try to make the case that it's incredibly important to expand what we're able to allow the Pentagon and defense folks to do to protect us. And then fifth and finally is what will ring true with many of you, I think, and that is the Article 1 project. Through both Democratic and Republican administrations for a number of years, decades, the executive branch, the Article 2 branch, has been clawing away at the authority and constitutional responsibility of the Article I branch, the legislative branch. And that has resulted in a president now who says, it doesn't make any difference to me what Congress does, I got a pen and a phone and I'll do whatever I want to do. That language, that sense, that message to the American people, which basically says I don't need to worry about the Constitution, is destructive to our system of governance. And so we believe that it's incredibly important to push back on that. The way to get that back, obviously, is, as James Madison said, through the power of the purse. It runs right through the Budget Committee, right through the Appropriations Committee, and we've got to put some teeth into that. And that's what the Article I group is working on, and I'm excited that we're having that as one of the 5 pillars, because when I go across the country, one of the huge frustrations that folks have, and things that have resulted in the kind of anger that you sense out there, is that Congress is incapable or not able to battle back and appropriately assert its constitutional responsibility. So I'm hopeful that will move in that direction in a big way, and have that to be embraced as well. Let me just close with a bit on the Budget Committee, and then happy to answer your questions. We last year, as you know, put forward a budget. Got agreement with the Senate on a budget that balanced within a 10-year period of time, didn't raise taxes, gets us on a path to paying off the debt, lays out a vision for the next 10 years that would solve the challenges that we face, and an agreement with the Senate for the first time in that way in 14 years. So big stuff. A red letter date. It ought not be. We ought to do that every single year, but it was a red letter date. This year has been a bit more of a challenge for a reason that you know well, and that is an agreement that was reached last fall to bump up the discretionary number for both FY16 and 17. And we continue to have challenges trying to get our folks on board to support a budget. I'm hopeful that we'll get there. I don't know that we'll get there, but I'm hopeful that we'll get there. I do know that what needs to happen is that we need to move aggressively forward in the area of budget process reform. And the Budget Committee is going to embrace that for the rest of this year, and put forward, along with the Senate. The Senate is moving in a little different direction, but Senate Budget Committee, that is, and put forward a rewrite of the 74 Budget Act. 74 Budget Act, we continue to budget under it at the federal level, written 42 years ago by folks who wanted to expand the reach and power of government and spend more money. We believe that the default of our budgeting process ought to be to spend less money, right-size government, decrease the reach of the federal government. And one of the ways to do that is with appropriate budget process reform. So I'm excited about it. It's hard to get other folks excited about budget process reform, but you can't raise the roof with it. But we're going to have a number of hearings over the next couple months, and spend July and August working on a rewrite of the 74 Act. If you've got ideas about that, we'd love to have them. And then finally, one last point, Jim, and then I'll drone down too long. We do a communication with the candidates who are running out there on a weekly basis. We'll start it next month, I think, through the auspices of the NRCC. So I talk literally live with every single candidate who wants to get on a call every single week to talk about what's going on here and how they should message, and try to give them real-time information so that they on the ground, whether they're battling an incumbent Democrat or whether they've got an open seat, that they've got real-time information. If you've got ideas about what we can share with them in your sphere of influence or area of interest on messaging, on issues, please get them to us. We're happy to relay that. It's a short call. It's about a 20-minute or 30-minute call, but it's always, when folks get here, they say, one of the things that I appreciate is the message and the information that you gave me on a weekly basis. So if you've got ideas about that, we're happy to include them in our conversation. So thank you so much for the work that you do. God bless you.